Christopher Nolan is one of the most creative minds in Hollywood today, and over the past 25 years, we've really gotten to see his creativity unfold on the big screen. But imagine the ideas he has that don't get to come to life on the big screen. Like, think of the stuff that goes around in his brain that doesn't get made into a movie. My mind is blown at the possibilities. Tenet is directed by Christopher Nolan and follows the protagonist, played by John David Washington, who is recruited by a secret organization trying to prevent World War III. Obviously, this was one of the most anticipated movies of the year, not just for me personally, but for the general public as a whole. Everybody that I talked to that is remotely interested in what movies are coming out was excited for this movie. And not just because it experienced a couple months of delays because of the coronavirus, but also just because of the trailers and the concept. This looked like it was going to be Christopher Nolan's biggest, most complex film yet. And guys, I can easily say beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is definitely Christopher Nolan's biggest, most complex film he has ever made. This is the biggest budget he's had to work with. This is the most complicated story and concept that he's ever had. It was kind of bound to have a little bit of divisive reviews, and coming out of press screenings, it did have rather mixed reviews. Some people thought it was too overly complicated. Some people really loved it. I loved it. I freaking loved this movie. I had so much fun watching it. I am so excited to talk about this because there's just so much to gush about. Jumping right into the positive aspects of this film, I think easily the best aspect of this film is the originality behind it. Like I said earlier, Christopher Nolan is one of the most creative minds in Hollywood today, and he is just on another level creatively. There is nobody with ideas like this guy. And even with films like Dunkirk that he's made, which on its surface seem rather simple or seem like something we've seen before, he finds a way to elevate it and make it unique and give us an original and a unique experience. And Tenet definitely falls into that niche. This is one of the most creative movies I've ever seen. It is just so interesting and so original. I've literally never seen anything like it. And not just is this film super creative, but the spectacle of this film is just completely unparalleled. This is such a huge movie. There is so much to take in whenever you watch it. It's 2.5 hours long. Like I said, it is a very complicated and complex story and concept. And so there is a lot to take in with this film. But it really helps this feel just like a huge movie. It is a film that really services the big screen and the big speakers, and it works so well. And I think the main reason why the spectacle is as big as it is and why it works so well is because of the technical aspects. I think this is a masterclass in technical filmmaking. The cinematography is just beautiful. It is so well shot. The sound mix is kind of overwhelming, but in the best possible way. It's just so loud. You feel every gunshot. You feel every hit in the soundtrack. The sound design is really, really interesting. And the visual effects of this film are just stunning. And most of it is all practical, which means it was done in real life and not like added in post, which I think is really going to help this film stand the test of time. It just looks gorgeous. It is a beautiful film from a technical aspect, and yeah, it just works so well. Another aspect that I need to talk about is Ludwig Göransson's score. It just fits this film so well. The best way that I could describe it is if the Social Network soundtrack was made into an action movie soundtrack. That's the best way that I can describe this, and it's just so great. Apparently, what I read somewhere is that they weren't able to record all of the soundtrack in studio because of the coronavirus, and so all the musicians had to individually record their parts and send it to Ludwig Göransson, and so he could mix it in together, which, if that is true, that just really elevates this thing. The fact that they made the soundtrack as good as it is easily one of the best soundtracks of the year. Also, I don't think you can talk about a movie without talking about the cast and the performances. I think they work really well for this film. John David Washington has a lot of charisma, has a lot of charm to him, and makes him very interesting, very fun to watch. Robert Pattinson has this kind of mysterious edge which makes him very interesting to watch, and Kenneth Branagh plays such a fascinating villain. He is super menacing and super evil, and you really feel the threat when he's on screen. And the other thing that I really liked about this film, amongst other things that I'm not going to mention because I don't want to go into too much detail, but it feels very much like a James Bond film, and this is something that Christopher Nolan said before the film even came out, that this was heavily inspired by James Bond, but it does feel like one of those classic secret agent films like James Bond when you're watching it, and it's so much fun. It's such a fun feeling, and it's a different film for Christopher Nolan, but it works really well. However, that's where you kind of start to step into some of the negative aspects of this film, because at times, this does borrow too many of the different aspects of James Bond films. Like, for example, I don't think James Bond films have very deep of characters, and this film doesn't have as deep of characters. And that's okay, because, like, look at something like Mission Impossible or James Bond. They don't have as deep of characters, but with Tenet, which is much more a standalone film, I would have loved to have a couple of the characters be fleshed out a little bit more, just so I could be a little bit more invested in the characters themselves. I also think the story wasn't as deep as it could have been. I think it could have added maybe another layer just to the actual story of it, make it a little bit more interesting. The story itself is rather straightforward, like most secret agent movies are, but the depth of concept for this film is way deeper than the depth of story, and I think the story is the most important aspect of a film. And I don't really have a big issue with either of those things, mainly because, like I said, it did draw a lot of inspiration from James Bond films, and those are aspects that you see throughout most James Bond films. They're just things that I would have liked to see done a little bit better. Also, there's this one character, I'm not going to say anything about who they are, but they're kind of just there to provide new information at certain points in the film, and so they felt very out of place. They just didn't feel like they fit in this film. Also, there were times where the sound mix was a little bit too overwhelming, like the music where the sound effects would have been too loud and I would miss certain lines of dialogue, and that only happened a handful of times, but I would have loved to have heard what they said over the music or the gunshots and the explosions or whatever. But in the end, despite some small issues, Tenet is a sight to behold. This is an experience that begs for the big screen, that begs for the biggest speakers, and I loved every second of it. I'm going to give Tenet a 9 out of 10. I decided to move away from my old rating system. I didn't really like it that much as time went on, and I think the number system is just more straightforward and a lot easier to understand, so I'm going to start doing that from now on. Alrighty, that's going to wrap up my review for Tenet. What is your favorite Christopher Nolan film? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like what I'm doing here and you'd like to see more, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll be updated as soon as I upload a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.